Welcome to The Drummer's Pathway, the podcast about music, life, and the creative process. Hello, I'm Michael Scott, and welcome to the Drummer's Pathway podcast, where we explore the personal and professional journeys of drummers, educators, and artists who've committed their lives to creativity and the arts. This episode features my conversation with Wilson Laurencin. Wilson has been a fixture in the Toronto music scene for decades. In addition to his television work on Open Mic with Mike Bullard and Canadian Idol, he is active on the theatre scene and has been involved in productions including Juliet, Lion King, Wicked, MJ the Musical, and more. He is also an in-demand freelance musician, having collaborated with a wide range of local and international touring artists. In this episode, we talk about his early musical inspirations, the essential characteristics of maintaining a professional music career, and why it's important to always make choices that reflect your desired path while maintaining a positive life balance. Now, let's get started with my conversation with Wilson Laurencin. When I take a look at your career, one of the things that really inspires me is just the wealth of experiences and genres of which you have had the opportunity to play. Right. One of the things that's really obvious to me is that you have a passion for music in all different styles. And because you've invested time throughout your development as a player and throughout your career, that has enabled you to be put into almost any type of situation and perform at a really high level. So where did the early inspiration for just learning music in general and not limited to one specific genre sort of start for you?
Let me just preface that a bit by just saying that even though I live in Canada, I was born and lived for early part of my life in England. So I came to Canada when I was 11. So that's important because as a kid in England, I had a cousin who played he was a snare drum player in a Scottish pipe band, right?
Okay.
So that is my link to the drums as far as being inspired to play drums initially and looking at drums initially. But all that being said is we did have a piano in our house in England. So I always played around with the piano. My mother played piano. Music, my extended family, my uncle played guitar and we sang. And so music was always around and a lot of music was being played in my house. And my background, my parents are West Indian or Caribbean, as they call it here, which means my mother's from St. Vincent, my father is from St. Lucia. So we were from that part of the world. So I listened to the music from that part of the world, as well as music that was back then. I was born in 1964. So back then, in late 60s, early 70s, stuff in England and American stuff, obviously, that was played over there too. So yeah, you're right. I had a lot of different types of music that I heard all the time that I was into. I just thought of this the other day, which I've never mentioned, which will be is important to mention, is that, as a kid, I was inspired in England. Obviously, I just realized this recently by a band in England called the Peoples. And this band is a band that everybody knows. Now, why I say this is because it's the Beatles. And okay. my mother, because I just remember this whole story. My mother has told me, like a lot of people have said, when the Beatles were on TV in England, I would always point to the TV and say the Peoples. I used to call them the Peoples. So I was inspired by the Peoples, which are in fact the Beatles, who used to be on TV in England, and I used to see them. So I guess they inspired me in a way. I'm not one of those big, huge Beatles fans. I have no problem with the Beatles. I love, all their hits. But yeah, I just realized that the other day. So that is part of my inspiration too. But we had music in the house, all different types of music. I had a piano. I had my cousin who played snare drum and my other cousin who played piano. And whenever we went to their house, I watched my plus cousin play snare drum and watch them jam and do stuff. So yeah, there was music all around me and all different types of music. And I absorbed all of it and loved all of it.
As a musician, we're often products of the environment of which we are raised in. And this is also important when it comes into stylistic genres, because there are some music that we tend to gravitate towards. And it's often because there's an element of that in our upbringing, because it was around us at that time. You know, the people that grow up in a Cuban culture, you know, that is second nature to them. Whereas, you know, sometimes that's not something that's part of our background per se. But I find for me, there's joy in just listening and developing an encyclopedia knowledge of sort of all different styles of music. That doesn't mean we're going to love it all, but we're going to absorb something from those experiences that is then going to inspire us to maybe go into a different direction. And for you, because your career, as I said at the beginning, is so diverse in terms of the experiences that you had to have a fundamental understanding of all of these different styles just to be able to fit into the professional situations that you have found yourself in. You are currently involved in a lot of musical theater. And one of the things that I find with musical theater is that sometimes you learn a style, say when you're in college or before, that might not resonate with you, but suddenly it shows up in some of the arrangements for a lot of these sorts of things. And so that time that we invest into learning these different styles is a huge benefit to all the different aspects of our career, because you may never know when that time invested is going to pay off, but it's essential that you actually put the time into these.
Well, case in point, now that you're talking about that, is I did Toronto's second run of Lion King. It was here 20 some odd years ago. It had a sit down here. And I recently finished the sit down in Toronto. We did 10 months here. So it's African music, right?
Yes.
And I'm not from the region of Africa, but, you know, many years ago, I played with a couple of different African artists. So that speaks to your point about, you know, learning styles, and you don't know when, you know, all these years later, it might not be the exact region of Africa, but, you know, there's similarities, right? And it's a vibe. It's all about vibes. So as long as you can catch the vibe, you can implement that into whatever you're doing. This is what I tell guys who sub for me on these different shows recently, and especially with Lion King, I told them, it's like, don't worry about nailing the pattern. Of course, that's important, but as long as you have the vibe happening, the music is happening. And that's what it's about. It's about music. It's not about playing the exact notes but it doesn't feel right, because the person listening isn't going to like it. If it feels great, they're not going to say to you, well, you're not playing the exact pattern. You're missing a couple of sixteenths here. No, they don't. When people listen to music, they're not looking at the music, sitting there watching you. That's not the way it works. They sit there. They want to be entertained. They want to feel something. So if you're feeling something and you're making the music feeling something, that's going to transfer to the listener and they're going to feel something. So yeah, I played with a bunch of artists who are African. Years later, I play in the Lion King. So I brought some of that experience, helped me playing that drum book.
Well, and along that lines, last year I was involved in a student theater production of Evita, and a lot of that music has a lot of Brazilian sambas and things in that genre, which is outside of my comfort zone. And if I looked at the charts and I played strictly what was written, it might technically be correct and it would feel terrible. So at that point, I invested a lot of time into, you know, really listening to the music, listening to the soundtrack albums, and realizing what they're playing is not what's written on the page. And so it's essential that you adapt accordingly And as you said, because the music needs to feel good. The people are
Exactly.
looking for how the music makes them respond, as opposed to sitting there with the chart in front of them going, oh, you missed this. But the
Yeah.
flip side of that is that there's still a professional level of which you need to be able to read, because there's many factors in those things that are
Yep.
characteristics that tie
Yep.
the whole thing together. And that's all
Yeah.
part of the professional experiences that you get from, from your development years.
Right. 100%. 100%. So reading is definitely, if you're going to do theater, yeah, you have to read. Like it's, the other thing, along with that whole statement that I just made, is one of the things people don't realize is that we'll still talk about theater, and this works for every other segment of the music business, is that if somebody calls you to do a theater show, doesn't matter if it's on Broadway or if it's in Thunder Bay doing local theater, when they call you to do it, the minimum is, and the assumption is, that you know how to read.
Yes.
So for people who want to get into theater and do theater, make sure you know how to read. Like, don't wait to get a theater gig and then learn to read. That's all I'm saying. And that's how it works with every segment of music. If you want to be a studio drummer and somebody calls you to record, the assumption is you can play with a click track.
Yes.
If you can't, don't wait to be called to go into the studio and then learn to play. It doesn't work like that. So you will kill your career if you think that's the way it works. You don't learn how to accommodate the request. You just serve the request, meaning you walk in there, you know how to read. They don't put a chart in front of you and say, hold on a second, let me figure this out. It doesn't work like that. So, reading is very important. If you want to be in theater, and if you want, like 90% of what I do, even outside of theater, I read. Even if I'm going to play with somebody that I've never played with before, they're playing their original stuff, I'll make my own charts. Because I don't, like, for me to learn 20 songs for somebody playing whatever original music they're doing, like, how am I going to be able to learn the songs without charting it out? It's impossible unless I'm going to sit there for a year with headphones on listening there, which I don't have the time to do. So anyway, I digress.
And along that lines, one of the things that I often have told my students in the past, because sometimes they come in, they want to learn how to read, and sometimes they don't want to learn how to read. And I tell them it's important to learn the fundamentals, because even though you may never find yourself in a situation where you have to read a drum chart, it'll change your perspective in terms of how you hear music, because now you have an understanding of how all the pieces fit together. So when you're trying to learn something by ear and you're having trouble figuring out that one little section, if you have an understanding of how to read and how to notate and how to write things out, you can figure it out very quickly. So that's going to be a very useful tool, even if you're just a hobbyist trying to learn things for a weekend jam at your friend's place. For me, I love being in situations where I have to read. And the flip side of that, I already sort of mentioned this with the Evita comment, is I've also taken lessons with teachers, not to improve my reading, but to improve my interpretation of what is on the page. Because sometimes you'll be given a chart and you can play things exactly on it and it doesn't seem that difficult. But the chart is not the be all and end all. You have to be able to take that and convert the notes on the page into music. And without an understanding of how to take that and make it feel good and interpret it in a way that people want to hear, that's a completely different skill set as well, too. And that's something that I think you've done very well throughout your career, is that you understand that context.
Exactly. So you are exactly right. And that comes with experience too. The experience helps you to improve and to develop that that other muscle, musical muscle, which is interpreting what is on the chart. And I will say this, and because I'm old, here's another thing, just so people know. Because I'm older, and everybody goes through phases in their musical journey, but because I'm older, I will say things, and I may throughout this interview say things that people are like, I can't believe you're saying that. Like, aren't you scared you're offending somebody? Or no, because I'm older now. It's like I'm past that stage. So I don't want to intentionally offend anybody, but if I can give some information to somebody that might, light a light bulb in their head and help them in their career because they're younger, then great. I'm a kind of no holds barred type of guy right now. So why I say this to you is because I've done, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've done several shows. And what I've noticed is this. For the most part, the drum charts are fine. But in every show I've done, I've seen stuff on the charts that is not playable because they have stuff written for 5 limbs.
Yes.
Which is, I only have 4. And sometimes they write stuff that's wrong, that's not exactly what is played, because I can listen to the reference material and it's totally different. I'm talking about stuff that's really weird. Like it's playing 2 and 4 and they have a snare drum on beat 3 in the chart and nobody corrects this. And the shows have been around for a while. Yeah. So that speaks again to your interpreting what's on the page. You know what the feel is supposed to be. You know what the idiom's supposed to be. Remember, it's a copyist. The guy sits there. He's trying to copy as much stuff as possible in the shortest amount of time possible to make the biggest return on his time invested. He doesn't really care about thinking, oh, is that wrong? Or no, he just wants to get it done, move on to the next show. Unfortunately, that's the real world. So your experience will help you weed through this and figure out stuff. And that will happen. You could be on Broadway again, you could be in Thunder Bay. It's going to be the same thing. All right. The location is different, but the scenario is the exact same. So yeah, experience. The more you do it, the more you will learn, right? And the more you do it, the more it helps. But reading is still key, but you have to be able to, when you see things that are weird, realize, is it weird because somebody overlooked it, or is it weird for a reason because they really want that, right? So it's, again, experience. Anyway.
I once heard an interview with a renowned session drummer, and he was talking about the fact that when people look at what it is that he does, people often say, well, you're not really doing anything fancy, or it's pretty simple, and I can do that too. And he said, the jobs I get hired to do, and a lot of them are like TV shows and all these other things, of which you've done a lot. So the jobs I get hired to do are not about my capability to play the simple parts. The jobs that I get hired to do are about my capability to play the parts, watch the conductor, play along with the click track, play along with the fact that the click track cuts out, play along with the fact that the artist that we're the backup band for changed the arrangement based on what we rehearsed 2 hours before we actually went to air. They pay me to be able to segue into something else because the keyboard now stops working and suddenly the medley that we're doing suddenly is going to be changed on the fly. Plus, we also need to look good for TV, and we also need to go through, we need to do these things. He goes, that's what they pay me for. It's not the fact that the parts are simple. And so you have had a lot of experience throughout your career getting to do a lot of television, everything, primarily I originally was aware of you from your experience working with Mike Bullard on that particular one. Plus, you also did Canadian Idol for a number of years, and there's a lot of other award shows and things that you've done. So when you do those sorts of things, there's a lot of pressure in those scenarios of which you need to perform at a really high level. And because of the nature of these sort of things, it's almost an anonymous job where you're there to do a job to make sure that nobody notices that you're there because everything needs to be perfect. But it's not about you. And that develops a sense of professionalism and a skill set and a mindset that you can go through, and you can handle those sorts of pressures and be able to adapt on the fly. So I'm really interested in getting your perspective about what it was like working in those situations and what were sort of the takeaways from those experiences that you had.
That's a loaded question. Let me see how, every day I could answer it differently based on what I remember. especially from working on the Bullard Show, which was, for the people out there that don't know, it's the Canadian version of David Letterman
Yes.
or the Tonight Show. So it's a 5 nights a week late night talk show, exact same format as the American counterparts, the exact same scenario, live band, host, all of that exact same. So I did that for 7 years. We were on the air for 7 years. What can I say? I think one of the things that's very important to say is going back to the whole thing about theater. When they call you, they don't ask you if you can read. That's a requirement. With TV, it's kind of the same thing. And that I think in general, the playing with everything is, the way I look at it again, is 50% of the pie.
Mm-hmm.
That means, I don't want to put people down or make what people do look like it's not good. But the reality is this: for younger people, they see guys play drums on the social media sites, be it YouTube or Instagram and all that, TikTok. There's guys out there who play great stuff, and it's amazing, right? And I watch it myself, and I watch it every day, and I love it. It inspires me. But here's the reality. The reality, if you want to make a living in music, in the music business, it's different than that. It's not that.
Yes.
Okay? And hopefully, the people who are younger, at some point, they will realize that, and they will take that stuff for what it is, which is entertainment. And they won't think that that's the real music world, because it's not. So going back to TV and what did I learn from TV? Yeah, you're exactly right in what you said. It may be simple, but there's so many other things happening that if you can't handle that simple in a storm, right, then you can't be there. You won't last. And the other thing too is, if you want to make that simple complex, you're adding to that storm. You're adding to that noise that's happening. They don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to. There's a million, and TV every day doing the show, there was a million things that would be happening on stage. And when it went to a commercial break, off stage. So you have to be able to be mindful enough and flexible enough to be able to adapt, like you say. There's many times, like you're saying, that I'm playing with somebody and something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Be it they could forget lyrics, they could forget a chorus. I have to be able to adapt and go with the flow. Because if I don't, what's going to happen? It's going to be a nightmare. I'm just adding to the storm. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So that has happened many times on TV. That has happened many times live. It's even happened in theater. So, but going back to TV, yeah, what I learned from TV is it's hard to say. Simple is better, always. Keep a smile on your face. With TV was very important, because if the shit was hitting the fan,
yeah,
you don't want the guy sitting at home watching the TV. They can read that from your face.
Yeah, for sure.
So you keep a smile on your face and you adapt. Like one scenario is coming back from a commercial, they would always have cameras on the band, right?
Mm-hmm.
For example, sometimes every now and then I would be soloing coming back from a commercial. And I remember this one time soloing, coming back, and there's a countdown. I drop a stick. Not a big deal, right?
Yeah.
You drop a stick, you pick up another stick. But here's the thing. When I dropped that stick, you know where it landed? It landed right underneath my bass drum foot pedal. So the foot pedal didn't work.
I've been there.
But that's what I mean. The camera's on me. We're coming back from, I just go with it. So you have to be adaptable. You can't think about, well, no, I can't play that lick I was practicing for 10 hours. It's not about that. It's about, you have a job to do. You have to deliver, even though the circumstances aren't the best, but you still have to deliver. So you have to be able to adapt on the spot, make things happen. You got to make things happen on the spot, regardless of the circumstances. So there's many times that stuff like that happens, right? Or I go to play the electronics, they're not working. Or I can't hear the guitar in my headphones, right? Stuff like that happens all the time. Or we have to vamp longer, or we have to cut shorter. Sometimes we would go, a lot of times we'd go to commercial playing a song. You know, it goes out to commercial, you hear a song. And then you come back from commercial, the people who are watching on TV, they hear the same song, right? But unbeknownst to them is that we actually stopped after the camera went off.
Yeah.
Because they had to fix something and they didn't want to hear any sound.
Yeah.
And then they give us a countdown. Now I have to start same tempo, come back, make it look like and sound like we would continue through the whole commercial break where we didn't. So yeah, you got to be adaptable and you got to go with the flow.
Well, and I have found since I've gotten into doing theater things after not doing that for about 3 decades, is that all of the experience that I had playing in orchestras and things when I was in high school have significantly put me in a better situation working with these things. Because now it's not about just playing the notes on the page. Now I got to play with a conductor. And fortunately, the conductors that I get to work with are fantastic. But there's an art form to watching a conductor, because everyone's got their own style and their own approach, and you have to figure that out. And then, you know, now I'm doing shows with a conductor and a click track, and sometimes the click track gets delayed, and so now you have a click track in your ear that doesn't match up with the tempo of what the conductor is doing, and you have to then adjust to that. Because it doesn't matter in the end. What matters in the end is the experience of the people and the audience. And to go back to your point about you always have to have a smile on your face. You know, often when everything's not going well, the only way people know is because of your facial expression. If you're smiling and you're just carrying on, most people never even notice that, including sometimes the people in the band that you're playing with. But as soon as you show that level of frustration, then it draws attention to that. Whereas sometimes it's just a moment. And sometimes if you internalize that, it throws you off, and now other situations happen because you're frustrated or you're pissed off, and you have to just let it go because it was a moment and carry on. And that's one of the things that I love about the theater experience, is that sometimes when you're doing a live gig, you can take a moment to fix something. In theater, particularly for shows that have no dialogue because it's just music straight through, your break is intermission. So at that point, you really can't stop.
You're right.
Until you got to the end, regardless of what it was, and then you can reset and then go back and say, okay, I've made it to the end of that one. And that is not a situation that is suited for many people who are trying to make a living in this industry. There's a certain mindset and a certain perspective that really makes people in those situations comfortable, that would throw many people off who are incredible musicians off immediately if they were put into those scenarios. So it's definitely something that I really appreciate and value in the people that do this exceptionally well, because it's not a gig for everybody.
Oh, 100%. When it comes to conductors and what you were talking about, I will first say this, is that you referenced being in school and playing and being able to hone those chops because you're following a conductor and you're playing. As far as my experience, I'm actually different than a lot of guys in that, number one, I never went to college for music. Right. So I never went to Humber College or Berkeley or whatever. I was involved in music in high school. So I did play in the high school band and high school orchestra, but I didn't play drums. I played tuba from junior high all the way through the end of, up until maybe the last year in high school. I played tuba. So in all the orchestras and all that stuff that I did, I was never playing drums. I was playing tuba.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's not like I was able to play drums and work on that, doing that. I think only the last year in high school, I played a bit of drums. in the orchestra. But my whole thing with drums in school is a whole other story. But when it comes to conductors now with theater shows, my my thing is again, because I didn't do it in college or high school, I had to learn kind of on the job. And one of the problems for me is that most of the time in most of the stuff that I did, I was actually the conductor because people are waiting for me to count the song in. They're waiting for me to set up this or to set up this so the singers know. Like if they don't hear a fill, they're waiting to hear that fill so that they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
To come into the chorus or whatever. So I had to learn on the jobs, but I did learn on the job. And fortunately for me, I'm a quick study with a lot of this stuff and I have big ears. So I will say this. I'll go back to Lion King because that was mostly a conduct. There really wasn't any click track except for maybe one or two things. It was all conduct. Whereas And Juliet, which I'm doing now, is 97% click, which I love, right? But Lion King, we had 4 different conductors, right? All 4 of them were different. So as a player and as a drummer, I look at it this way, music theater. I look at my job like I'm a pilot flying a plane. Because a pilot, every day he walks in, he has the same book that he looks at that has the instructions for the plane that he flies every day. It doesn't change.
Mm-hmm.
Those instructions do not change. But he has to go through that checklist every day before he even attempts a flight. And even in flight, he has a checklist. And he's doing the same route that he's done a million times, right? But he still has to reference that book, right? To a certain degree. So I look at it this way. I'm the co-pilot. The MD is the pilot. I'm the co-pilot. That's why you will find that for Toronto is called a Rule 56 city or something. And that means that if a touring show comes to Toronto, over a certain period of time, I think it's 6 weeks or longer, the band has to be a certain percentage of locals. A large percent of the band in the show has to be locals. LA is like that. Chicago is like that. Certain big markets are like that with the AFM. The guys that they always bring, the touring shows will always bring are number 1, the MD, the assistant MD. I think they have 3 people. And the third person is
The drummer.
the drummer, always. Right? So I'm like the co-pilot. Going back to Lion King, 4 different conductors, 4 different sets of tempos, 4 different ways of conducting where their downbeat is, 4 different interpretations of where they want you to play in relation to their downbeat. Because some conductors, when they come down, right? Usually orchestras, traditional orchestras, the guy comes down, the orchestra is hitting the beat after, just because of the way they articulate and their instrument. But in musical theater, some guys want you to be on, some guys want you to push, some guys want you to be behind. Some guys just go like this. Some guys give you this. It can be anything. Some guys will give you this. Some guys will give you this. So you have to learn the conductor, learn their mannerisms, learn what they like and how they like the band, especially the drummer in relation to them. So it's all a learning curve. Shows with clicks, you don't have to worry about that because you'll hear 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4. Click is on, you follow the click. The conductor is conducting probably the singers on stage. It's a different story. But manual conducts or analog or old-fashioned conducts, yeah, it's a trip. It's a trip. And I will tell you this one story because this speaks to that. Is I did this big concert at the Sony Center in Toronto. It was for, I can't remember, it was this big festival. Anyway, It was Rufus Wainwright. I don't know if you know who Rufus
I do,
Wainwright
yes.
is. So it's Rufus Wainwright and a bunch of other singers. Boy George, David Byrne. What's that other guy who plays drums? He sings all those classical songs. A lot of drummers play with him. I can't remember. Anyway, they were all main, big name, whatever. The conductor was one of the big conductors from Broadway. He did the recent Wicked movie. He was the guy in charge of that. So I go to the rehearsal orchestra, right? It wasn't a huge orchestra, but it was an orchestra. I go to the rehearsal. We go to the rehearsal room. I'm always worried about the conductor because where am I in relation to them? And we rehearse. He does his thing. I guess I did okay because they didn't kick me out. But I noticed, like, man, it's a drag because he's going like this. Then the orchestra is playing. It was a pain in the butt for me, man, because I'm like, where should I be? Anyway, the next day we go to the stage, right? Sound check before the show. We set up. I'm set up. We go to play. He starts conducting. I noticed something on the stage, on stage left and stage right, inside. He has a camera on him, and they have these big screens with him, with his conducting, so that everybody can see in the orchestra. So you're not obstructed. If you're obstructed, you can look at these big screens on both sides. The audience can't see it, but we can see it. But you know what was great about it? Is that if I looked at the screen, it was delayed. So you know what that meant? That meant they were watching him, but I was watching the screen. So because the screen was delayed, I was synced up perfectly with the audio, because I just watched the screen because I'm following exactly him, and it was delayed to the orchestra. So it saved me in that I couldn't watch him. I watched the screen. So you have to figure out those little things. Again, it's one of those things. You adapt to the situation. If you're coming down here, I'm hitting here. The orchestra isn't. But this is delayed now. So I'm hitting it on the screen. I'm syncing up with the orchestra. Problem solved. That's what I do. I solve problems.
When I was in high school, I was the principal percussionist of a local youth symphony, and I studied with the principal percussionist of the orchestra. And I liked that because he pushed me to play at like the highest level, but he also gave me a lot of perspectives in terms of working with conductors, because that was his job. And I remember saying we were doing this concert with this touring conductor who had quite an established name. And I remember talking to my teacher about how nervous I was about this. And they said, oh, he's a great guy. He's a guy that, has this incredible wealth of knowledge, and he's a great personality. That's why people love him when he comes in to do these things. And he said, but here's the key. When you are watching him conduct, stare at his shirt, and the third middle button on his shirt on the way back up when he moves his hand is where he actually means the beat to be. If you follow
his crazy,
if you follow his baton, it doesn't make any sense, because that's not where it is, because he's so animated. Because conductors are also performers. They're there to guide
100%.
But they're a performer to the audience. They're the personality that is on the stage. And so they're performing. And so at that point, sometimes the performance takes away from the precision of what it is that they're doing. So which is totally fine, but you have to be in a situation where you understand that. And so I remember at the rehearsal, I spent the whole entire time just staring at his dress shirt and the little third button down, and I'm like, without that, I would have completely thrown me off. But these are the little things that, for people that haven't done these sorts of things, you don't understand those situations and those experiences. And you have to often fail in these situations in order to walk away and build your skill set. So along that lines, have there been any real examples of things that did not go well that put you at a much higher level because you've learned from those situations?
I'll be honest with you. I'm sure over the years I've done gigs um, that didn't go well, be it my fault or the fault of something around me. But, I learned from it, as you say. Nothing really particular comes to mind, but I will say this. I mean, the only time, what drummers should be thinking is we got to try and take away that that possibility of something not going well by being prepared for the gig and what type of gig it is. So it has, number one, your playing has to be at or close to the level of the gig situation that you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's playing at a bar, playing on a concert stage, or playing on the moon. It doesn't matter. You have to be around that level. You don't have to be above that level, but you got to be around that level. Number one, minimum. Number two, we got to talk about you have to have the right equipment for the job. So if you're getting called to do a gig that is, I don't know what type of music, but you don't need a lot of drums and you show up with, 10 toms, double bass, 50 cymbals, it's not required and people are going to look at it funny. You got to come with the appropriate equipment. On top of that, your equipment has to be in good working order. So imagine you show up to a gig, your snare drum head is like on its last legs.
Yes.
And you don't know whether or not it's going to make it through the gig. That's not being prepared.
No.
Or your cymbals don't sound good because you just brought whatever and they're not appropriate for the situation. You're playing a jazz gig and you have a 16-inch ride cymbal.
Yes.
I'm just picking things that are an anomaly for that type of music situation. Yeah, it has to be appropriate stuff and it has to be in good working condition. One of the big things that I should mention, and this is a problem for a lot of younger drummers, is being on time. I've seen this time and time again. It has could be the greatest guitar player, bass player, drummer, or whatever. But for some reason, they don't understand what being on time is. If you have a gig, doesn't matter what the gig is, it starts at 9:00. You're a drummer. What time would you be there?
I would be there at 7:30.
Great. There are some guys that would be there at 8:45. That can't happen at all.
I always double the amount of traffic time that they say it's going to take me to get there. If they say it's going to be half an hour, I give myself an hour.
Yeah.
Because if you have half an hour, that means that you need to leave it exactly the amount of time. And then there's always that one more thing that you needed to do, or you forgot to feed your cat, or you forgot to do like just little things, and then suddenly it gets added up, and then that's when all of the traffic lights seem to be stuck on red, then it adds the element of stress. I also find being a drummer, I like to get there, scope out the space, allow myself enough space, because there's been times when you throw everything up and everyone's like, here's the amount of space you get to use, and then you realize you're 2 inches closer to the wall than you should have been. So I always set everything up and then move everything else by about 6 inches, because sometimes you don't know until you start playing that, I need about an extra inch here just so I'm not banging my arm against it. And you got to factor in the space and let everyone build around you. And it also, being late affects not only your headspace, but it affects the headspace of the musicians that you play with. And so when the show starts,
100%.
you should be relaxed and ready and prepared to start the show. And when I'm doing these theater shows and say our call time is 9:30, I show up at 8:30. partly because I get better parking. I like to sit there and have time to talk to the musical director or the conductor and just have some social time before that, get things set up. And then when everyone else shows up, I'm already done. The technician has said to me in the venue that we played, because I love it when you're here because I show up at 9 and you're already ready to go. So I can show up and I can already start miking the drum kit because you're here half an hour before I'm ready to go, which means when everyone else shows up, I'm further ahead of the game.
Right, exactly. So I learned this many, many years ago. So the MD for a guy who I worked with, who's a friend of mine for many years. We did the talk show, and he did Canadian Idol and many award shows. He always had a saying, and the saying was this: you can be as early as you want, you just can't be late. Okay? And in TV, it's even worse because there was a couple seasons on the Mike Bullard show that we went live to air because we also broadcast to the East Coast, which was ahead time difference of where we are, right? So we used to go to live to air. So can you imagine, like, you're starting and somebody's not there? You can't. It's like I don't get like some of these guys who like show up last minute. I don't get that headspace. So why I say this is because years ago I learned that, and I use that mindset even if I'm going to go play some little club for $100. I use that same mindset. The reason is so that it's a habit. I don't have to ever. So when it means something, it's not something that I have to. It doesn't tax me because I'm just used to operating that way. So if you're waiting for that amazing gig to like all of a sudden you're going to start showing up on time with proper gear and make sure everything is, it doesn't work that way. Just do it for every gig. If you do it for every gig, then it's that mind, you don't have to think about it anymore. It doesn't become a burden on you. You don't want to make those things a burden because your job is just to play. Right? So if all of a sudden you got to change the way you get to that gig and what time you get to that, it's gonna be taxing on your mind, and that's gonna take away from your musicality. You're not gonna be able to be you because you're thinking about other stuff that has nothing to do with music but needs to be done in order for the music to be played. So just start from day one. If you're a young guy and you want to be a pro, start with that mindset from day one. You're going to play at a wedding or a bar, and it's not, for whatever reason, it's not a big deal gig, but it is a big deal gig because you're getting paid, number one. And start getting there an hour before. Get there before everybody else. So what if somebody says to you, makes a joke, you're a drummer, you have to arrive before everybody else and leave after everybody else? Great, you made the joke. So what is the joke saying? It's not saying anything. It's a fact. So it's just a fact. It's a fact of life. That's the instrument we play. You love to play drums? That's part of playing drums. If you don't like that, then be a singer and just show up with a microphone. Oh, seriously. Like, then just sing. Don't play drums because that is part of playing drums. So show up. Make sure your gear is ready. Show up with enough time so that you don't stress yourself and you can be able to play music and your head is free. You know what I mean? And you'll get hired all the time. Because remember, band leaders don't want to have to work. Where is John Doe? Like, we're going to start at 9 and it's 8:45. My drummer's not here. And then people are going to be breathing down his neck. He's not going to want that drummer again. Anyway, that's a thing that's always an issue with, doesn't matter. I've seen some amazing musicians, they have that problem, and it'll cost you gigs, man.
If the rehearsal starts at 7:00, then you need to be ready to go at 10 to 7. Not 7:00. Okay, now we're going to plug things in. I need 10 minutes to set this. It's a courtesy and a
And
respect thing.
sorry to interrupt, Michael, on the subject of rehearsal, you have to realize that young musicians and some older musicians, they don't realize or they don't know the definition of rehearsal, because they'll show up to said rehearsal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the leader will say, okay, let's play XYZ tune. You go to play it and they'll say, hold on a second, let me see what the chords are. No, we're at rehearsal. We're not at practice. Practice is what you do at home. We're not at practice. We're at rehearsal, which means we're running through stuff. You got to learn your stuff on your own time. And that's called practice at home. So people got to realize that too, because too many times go to rehearsal and like I'm sitting there, some guy's figuring out how the bass line works. No, you're wasting my time. You're wasting everybody's time. Practice at home, rehearse at the rehearsal.
Yes.
Very important. Two distinct, different things. A lot of people don't realize that. Anyway.
I don't remember where I heard this, but I often reference this quote. And what I like about it is that it basically just says is that you're never too good for any job you say yes to. So sometimes people will be hired for a situation that go, oh, well, I don't have to do a lot of stuff because I'm really good at this. It'll be an easy gig. Well, if you said yes, then you have to be prepared for them.
Yeah.
Because person that's going to get the job is not often the superstar player. It's the guy that showed up early, that put the time in to learn things and was positive.
Exactly.
I've been hired in different situations before where when I'd walk into a recording session and I never met the people in advance, but I walk into the session and I've prepared everything based on the music that they set and the conversations that I've had on the phone with them, because sometimes clarification in advance makes a really big deal in terms of what they're really expecting from you. And then I'll walk in and I realize everyone's nervous. And so my job here is not to just play at the best level that I can. My job is to make them feel better so that they're playing at the best level that they can too. So there's also the personal interactions that you have with the players is a significant part of the professional experience.
100%. You got to make it's like the whole warm and fuzzy thing, right? Yeah. It's a comfort zone, right? We got to make it a comfort zone. Especially if you don't know them, they're trying to figure you out. You're trying to figure them out. So you have, that professional acumen of like, you don't talk about certain things because you don't know them, right? They don't know you.
Yeah.
You're there for an objective. You try and meet that objective with the least amount of drama around it, right? That's very important, man. And if you're a person that can't deal with those scenarios, it's going to be hard for you to work outside of working. Just if it's your band, you can be that way. Mm-hmm. But for most of us, it's not our band. We're just a cog in the wheel. Yes. You know what I'm saying? We're part of the process. We don't want to make the process more difficult for the person. We want to make it as comfortable as possible. You don't have to be overly nice, but you have to be respectful, right? You got to respect the people in the room that you're working with. Because, at the end of the day, let's be honest, we all have shit in our life, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know what shit they have in their life. So just make things as comfortable as possible, and it will take you far in the music business and in life. Right?
Well, and one of the aspects that is often taught about being successful in the music business is the aspect of networking.
Right.
What they don't teach you beyond that is really what that means. And so what happens is that there's many people in the situation where they go in and they're schmoozing and they're a lot of self-promotion and you do all of this stuff and it creates this, rather than extending your network, it diminishes your network because you're giving the wrong vibe. And one of the things that I've learned, particularly from having the conversations that I've done on this podcast, is it's not so much about network and self-promotion. It's about building genuine relationships. And through the connections 100%. That you make with people, you can then establish yourself because you've established yourself as a genuine person that shows interest in the person that you're getting a chance to work with. And that's an aspect that is essential. Genuine relationships will lead to better and truer professional opportunities.
No, you're 100% right. And, there are a lot of great musicians out there that, for whatever reason, they don't gel together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the way it goes. If somebody, I don't know how to put this, but you don't have to like the same music necessarily, but there has to be some common ground, right? There has to be, whether it's your age, whether it's where you come from, whether it's the type of food that you eat, there has to be something outside. And those are the things that will make that connection with that other musician or that other person that you can hopefully develop, and they will blossom into a good professional music relationship. And you have to be honest. Like, there's some people that I don't really work with, and it's not because I'm a horrible drummer or a horrible person. It's just we don't have that connection. We don't have that. And that's just the way it is. You can't do anything to change that. It's just the way it is. Right? So you just got to learn that. So you got to be able to recognize that and then move on and not worry too much about that and stress over that, or try to force something that isn't just naturally happening. If you're not gelling with these guys, doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean they're bad. It just means it's not going to happen. Don't force it. Move on to somebody else. There's going to be somebody else that you're going to be like, you guys are going to be simpatico, right? You guys are going to be from, like, one guy's from the city, one guy's from all the way in suburbia somewhere. But for some reason, you guys just connect, whatever it is, right? So you got to find those people. There are those people out there. Your network is out there. You got to find them. Don't force the ones that you think, oh, I should be working with that guy because he does X and Y gig, or he does a lot of gigs. If it's not going to happen, you're wasting your time. You're treading water with that guy. Go find somebody that you're going to be able to work with and have a meaningful relationship, and you'll do gigs with him too. Everybody does gigs. Gigs aren't exclusive to one person in the world, So it's like, there's plenty of stuff out there. Don't get wrapped up into that headspace of you have to play with, for example, you have to play with Sting. Why? What do you have to play with Sting? Just because Vinnie Colaiuta played with Sting, that doesn't mean you have to play with Sting. There's a guy out there named Joe Blow who's doing beautiful music too. You can have probably a better time playing with him than you can have playing with Sting. I know you love his music, but it might not be for you. So just appreciate what he does and find your own way, Anyway.
And we all have musicians that we have that chemistry with, that we literally could walk onto a stage or a recording studio without a discussion, without any ideas, without any concept, and make beautiful music. And then there's other situations where we can rehearse for 3 months, play with some amazing musicians, and regardless of how many gigs and all of the collective experiences that we have, it just never feels good. It feels like work. And people get into music because it's fun, and then they get into the profession of music because they want to make that the focus of their life. And then one of the things that you realize is that it's a job. It can still be something of which you are very passionate about. But I've seen many people who followed the path of something that they loved, and it became something they didn't love anymore. So I think, as we develop our careers, I think it's important to reevaluate and shift what the priorities are, because I'm in my mid-50s, and my perception and my priorities now for my career are very different than they were when I just got out of college and I was like 20 years old, because at that point the whole thing was fill the calendar, take every opportunity that you can get, and that's how you will establish yourself. So you play that game, and I didn't play that game well. But a lot of the things that I would do ended up not being the things that I was really particularly passionate about. And now when
Right.
I look at the situations that I pursue, it's because I've found things that are offering me that joy and those particular experiences. And so careers can evolve the same way
Right.
that people's life perceptions and things can also evolve.
Right. Exactly. I will say this now that you talk about when you were 20 and trying to fill your calendar with gigs. Another thing that I thought about, and again, you got to realize that throughout my career, my people's opinions change about the music business and about music. I'm
For
sure
sure.
yours have changed, right?
Yes.
You see things that you like, you see things that you don't like, and then you formulate your opinions based on your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But here's one thing that I always found funny, more so now than when I was younger, is that, you talk to musicians, it's not exclusive to drummers. You talk to musicians like you're in a bar watching a band. Hey, how's it going? Great. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing all right, man. Oh, what are you up to? They get into this thing about like, oh man, I'm busy, man. I'm doing this gig. I'm doing like 5 gigs this week, man. And I go, I look at them and I say to myself, you don't get it. Because here's the thing. Yeah, I'm doing 5 gigs. I'm playing this bar down the street, and then I'm going to go play a wedding over here. And then I'm going to go play another bar. And then I'm going to go play in a park somewhere. And all these gigs all over the place. And I say to them, great, man, great. In my head, this is what I'm thinking these days. I'm thinking, what a waste.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather play 1 gig. I'm going to put a dollar amount on this. I'd rather play 1 gig and make $2,000 than play 5 gigs and make $1,000. I don't know. That's just me. That's just me personally. Like, why do I want to run all over the place, set up drums, tear down drums, go over here, have to deal with like moving my gear and take them up the elevator in the hotel, make $1,000, where I could do this 1 gig, play a concert, and make $2,000.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be busy. I just want to play smart, do my 1 gig, make X amount of a chunk of cash, so I have time to create that balance and do other stuff that I like to do outside of music. That's just me personally.
I was having a conversation the other day with one of my bandmates, and I've heard people talk about this before. And when you're young, you put a dollar value on things, and you basically say, this is what I am worth in order to do this job.
Right.
And the idea is that you look at your success based on how many people have paid you your worth to do this job.
Right.
And now my perception is, you're not paying me to play music. You're paying me to say no to all of the other things in my life that I want to be doing, whether it's spending time with my wife, whether it's spending time playing in my studio and learning how to do some audio recording, whether it's spending time going for a walk, going for a nice meal, going to visit family. Every gig that I take, of which I am grateful and I love, means that there are other things in my life I now have to say no to. So I've now learned that it's really about, you're paying me to say no to other things, and that's where the dollar value comes into play. It's not because it's worth it for that in order to play, for me to do this gig. It's just a matter of, I have to turn down other things in my life to do this. And I'm very grateful for these opportunities. But as you get older, your perspective starts to change.
Well, 100%. And you know what? I like the way that you put it there, Michael. And I'll add this. I always say this, especially when I'm just on just regular gigs, which are jobbing gigs, wedding gigs or corporates. It's like, because I like to joke around, and I'll always say this to the leaders. It's like, I play for free. Like, I do all my gigs for free. No, I play for free. I play for free. What you pay me for is to move my gear into my car, get in my car, drive it in traffic down here, right? Put on whatever suit I got to put on, and then after pack up my gear and put it and drive. That's
Yeah.
what you're paying me for. You're not paying me to play.
Yeah.
Because I play for free.
Yeah.
So it's the same type of thing, you know? It's like, yeah, it's hilarious, right? And I will say this, even though people hearing this might think I only do gigs for $2,000. No, I was just trying to make
Yes.
an analogy.
Yeah.
I do gigs for $100, right? I have no problem doing that, right? Playing at a bar, a club.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier of that network of people that you work with and you're in sync with. I do that with guys that I've been playing with for years. So I'm not really doing it for the money. I'm doing it because me and this guy, we get along. We have fun, right? And we enjoy playing music together. So that's when you do those gigs for $100, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. So it's, you know, when I make that analogy about 2,000, 1,000, yeah, I don't want to be, I'm not going to do 5 gigs in a week all over the place. It's not that I'm better than that. It's just like, I'm older now. I got to be smart about it. You know what I'm saying?
You and I are sort of more similar generation in terms of how we've grown up and our perspectives on the industry. We came up with a time that there was no social media, there wasn't YouTube, there wasn't all these other things. And so in preparation for this conversation I had with you, you don't have as much of an online presence as some of the other guests and things that I may have come up with. And so you have to dig a little bit further to find out these experiences, because the extensive work that you have done is well documented, but not necessarily well visualized online. And that's the nature of sort of the era and things that we came up with. Whereas now the generation is everything is all social media and online, because now that's an essential tool in order to establish yourself and to establish your career. So I'm curious about your perspectives in terms of how that industry shift has changed.
I will say this, start out with that I love the whole internet and social media thing. It's great. You are correct in that I don't have a huge footprint out there. I came up with this saying the other day about myself, is that I'm probably one of the most famous drummers that you've never heard about.
Yes.
Right? Meaning that I've done a lot of stuff and you people don't know that it was me.
Yes.
They don't realize I was there or I was part of it. And that's because, you know, I've always been like this. I don't really talk that much about what I do to people in social circles. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, I play basketball, right? And I play at LA Fitness all the time. And I've been going there for like 11 years. I think maybe in the last, after COVID, like a couple of years, so maybe in the last year and a half is the only time that people actually knew what I did for a living, that I was a musician. So for like past eight plus years, they didn't know what I did because I never talked about it. But that's just me. But the whole social media thing, I get. I remember when I started Bullet Show, 97, so about 98, 99, I was ahead of the curve as far as the internet and having websites. Like if you saw my website from back then, I had a guy who worked on the show that was big into that. And he developed my whole site and it was cool. Like even if you saw it today, it would still be very cool. But I just did it because I thought, oh, this was interesting, get into it. But it's something that you have to keep up with.
Yes.
Right? I'm not interested in keeping up with making videos because there's plenty of guys out there who have more chops on the drums than me, right? People are into that. They're into the flash. They're into what I do. I realized this the other day looking at a video of myself. I go, part of the problem with me doing videos is that when I play, it doesn't look like I'm really doing much. And that's just an honest observation on my part about and that's just the way it is. My head's not bobbing up and down and my arms aren't flaying, right? So it's not captivating to the vision.
Yeah.
Visually, it's not captivating to the audience. So me doing a bunch of videos and stuff, people aren't going to be. It doesn't look like I'm doing anything,
Yeah.
right? But on the other side of the coin is I watch drum videos all the time. And
Mhm.
here's another thing about drum videos that I can't understand is when I look at the comments and you'll see a guy like Eric Moore or J. Rod Sullivan. These guys are
Yeah.
great, and I love watching them. And I'll see the comments, and I'll see like these comments like, "Oh man, that was unbelievable! I'm quitting drum. I'm going to throw my sticks away. I'm going to sell my drum kit." And I'm thinking to myself, it's weird because I always see that all over the place, and I'm like, I'm the opposite. The only time I get inspired is when I watch these guys. When I watch these guys, I get inspired to play
Yep.
drums. I feel the total opposite. So I don't know why people get into this whole mindset of it's this thing they have that like if you don't play like them, then you can't play drums. No, it's not that. Everybody has something to offer. Appreciate it, enjoy it, do your thing, right? But unfortunately, sometimes social media is like it's planting a bad stigma in people's minds, and it can be detrimental to the younger musicians because they think they have to be exactly like them when you don't have to be exactly like them. They're showing, when I look at it, I'm saying, unbelievable. That's what you can actually do that on drums. Now I'm inspired to try it or do my broken version of it.
Yes.
I don't want to sell my drum. Now I want to play drums. Because before I saw that video, I had no interest in drums. Now I have interest in drums. So I think for the younger people, they have this, I don't know, it can be detrimental to them. But social media, depending, like any tool, depends how you use the tool. It can be bad, it can be good. But, don't make it to be something that it's not. Just because you can't play like Eric Moore, it doesn't mean you can't go and play music with two other guys, a bass player and a guitar player. That doesn't mean you can't play music with them, right? I mean,
Well,
I don't get that mindset.
yeah,
It's weird.
it's funny because one of the things that I have often referenced with regards to social media is that even though it says social media, the whole idea is to bring people together, and in a lot of
Right.
ways, it actually disconnected people because now
You are
everyone
100% right.
is in isolation, feeling the need to make comments without actually having conversations. And so
Exactly.
I often find that if someone posts something and they have and I love vulnerability. So I don't necessarily need to see perfection. I want to see progress and part of the journey. So it's like, show me what
Right.
you're working on, even if it's not
Right.
perfect.
Yeah.
Because that's going to inspire me to go and work on that thing that isn't perfect, as opposed to the thing that's always
right.
perfect. Because
Right.
because there's a perception, that sometimes that people sound like that all the time. What you don't always realize is they spent 25 hours editing that video to get it to that particular point.
That speaks to my point because a guy has a video up on whatever platform and it looks amazing, you don't know how many hours he spent. Yes. Or if he edited the video. You've heard about the guitar players now on these social media sites that are editing things that they don't really play, and right? So you don't know what they've done to give you that end product, right? And I always say this. Sometimes I like, oh man, that's amazing what this guy is playing with this track. Now I say to myself, I wonder if I brought that guy here, sat him down on a set of drums, a 4-piece kit, and I gave him a piece of my music, and I say, okay, play it now. I wonder what he would sound like. He would probably sound like crap because he didn't have time. He's one of those guys that he sits and he works out all, right? You don't know what's behind the screen. So enjoy it, but you don't know. It could be edited. Could have taken him 10,000 hours. Maybe he did it in half an hour. Maybe he has that skill, but you don't know. So enjoy it. As long as you take something from it and try and improve what you do. That's all. Yeah, and musicians on a whole, especially when they're younger, you got to realize it's the imperfections that give you your personality
Yes.
in the way you play. Like, that's who makes you who you are. If we all played perfect, there'll be no difference between any drummer. You could hire any drummer and get the exact same thing. What's that? I mean, do you want that? Do you want it to be cookie cutter? We don't want that. It's music, right? It's artistic. It's got to breathe. It's got to feel good. It's got to ebb and flow. Like, like it does. It's not meant to be perfect. It's meant to be an identity. It's meant to be a thing by itself, right? I need to be able to discern this song from this song, even though they're the same style of music or they have the same progression. There has to be something different.
A mindset trick that I've started using over the last few years is that if I do a session and I'm listening back to the recording, I try and pretend that the drummer was not me and listen to the song without my own perceptions in that. And then I listen to it in the context and I go, hey, that was kind of cool. Where sometimes when I listen back to something as me, all I hear is the things I wanted to fix and I wanted to change this. Yeah. And I've also started doing that with other recordings that I love. I listen back to music that is so iconic and so influential to me that I sometimes listen to the context and say, I'm going to listen to it and hear the mistakes. And you listen to these things that are so inspiring to you that if you listen to it now and say, if I had to do this, all I would hear was the mistakes, you start to realize the things that you love were usually the mistake that the person made. And it's just so cool because that's what actually makes music real. It's about the interaction and it's not about perfection. And I think that sometimes people get so caught up and everything has to be perfect that it actually removes the spirit or the soul from this.
You said it perfectly. It removes the soul from the music. And if you do that, what do you have? Is it music? If there's no soul, because it's emotional, right? You want to have an emotional connection with the music. You know what I'm saying? So no soul, you're not going to have a connection. That's why, that's part of the reason why some people like some music and not other music, because they grew up listening to a certain style of music. So if they hear elements in that, in whatever they're listening to, they have the automatic common ground. That's what gravitates them towards it, right? So you don't, you take the soul out of music. What do you have? I don't know. That's a good question, But anyway, all of these things that you're saying are 100% right, man. And hopefully, the younger musicians out there, a small percentage of them will get it and they will take it and they will run with it. Unfortunately, as always, most won't until it's like way. There's stuff that was told to me that I didn't get till I was, 10, 20, 30 years later. Yeah. But that's just the way it is, right? It's all part of the journey, right? But interesting stuff that you're saying. I will say this, just to add something to your podcast. I don't know how much time we have left, but I don't know if you're aware of this because you said, again, as you said, there's not much about what I've done out there. Years ago, there used to be these things called sample CDs that you probably know about. You know about that?
I do, yeah.
So I was involved in that whole thing, that whole sample CD thing. Producers would get these sample CDs and they would take drum loops, sample them into whatever DAW or keyboard and play them and use them as the basis for their rhythm tracks. One of the guys that was, if not the biggest sample drummer there was, is Clyde Stubberfield. So I did a sample CD with Clyde Stubberfield. I produced one.
That's cool.
I also, because you probably don't know this, and I also did one with Bernard Purdy.
Oh, sweet.
Who's one of the most recorded drummers ever.
Yes.
That whole thing that I did, a lot of people don't know I did that, and I just wanted to bring that up. And also to bring it up to say that these two drummers are known for their field. We're talking about imperfection. And the company that I was involved with at the time, One of the guys was a genius in that he was using a synclavier, and he was able to extrapolate from sound waves and these guys playing their feel. And this was what he did, preceded all of these DAWs now, like Logic and Cubase, which I use. They have all these feel templates, like you could put a feel of. So he was the guy that came up with that. And the companies took what he did, and these we used to have these sample CDs with an accompanying disc that you would load into your computer, into the DAW, to have the feel from the sample that we recorded. It was it's a big, long thing. Anyway, so imperfection was part of why these guys had, like Clyde Stubberfield, that's his feel. Like, you can't replicate that. Like, you can't, I don't care how many chops you have, you can't replicate that as a drummer, because that's his feel. And I stood next to these guys and saw them play. It's amazing that these two guys, as far as drummers, had amazing feels and pockets, but they were totally different personalities and totally different drummers.
Yeah.
It was amazing. I was fortunate enough to be in a studio and working with these guys, and I was like totally blown away. And they didn't have the chops of these guys that you see on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They didn't have all that flash, but they sounded unbelievable. And their body of work speaks for itself. So for kids out there, like, check out all the stuff on social media, but go back and check out all these guys. Like Bernard Purdie, I remember near the end of the session, because I used to get them to record along with music, put on music, they would play along. So near the end of I did this in Purdie in New York. I remember saying to Bernard, okay, I'm going to put on a click track and have you play to it, play whatever you want, right? And in the studio, they had a thing called a Uri click, it's famous for back in the day. That's what they used to sync up the film, and people who know about it know what it is.
Yep.
I remember that I was so blown away by this. I put it on, and it was playing, and he said, okay, and he started to play. And you know how people talk about burying the click?
Yes.
You've heard that term.
Yeah.
He did that from beat one till he stopped playing, and it didn't matter what tempo I put it on. I've never in my life heard, because people talk about burying the click, and you hear their little demos, and they're not burying the click. They're either behind, they're kind of on for a bit, or no, this guy actually buried, the click was gone.
Yeah.
It was, I've never seen anything like that since. So guys may have chops and all this stuff, but, everybody has their thing, man. And, a guy like that and all the there's a reason why he recorded all those recordings and did all that work. Same with Stubberfield. Like, there's a reason why he played because when he played, it was just fucking, and Stubberfield, his stamina, like he would go a few hours before taking a break. Like his stamina to play and how strong he played and with authority and conviction. It's like, people don't get it. They think it's simple. It's not simple. They have something. There's something intangible that it's beyond chops, right? People don't realize that.
In both of those cases, they have this really deep pocket, this amazing groove. And the perception that I've often heard people say is because they're hitting really hard. What I've always heard was it's the opposite of that. They're very light touch players. Right. It's about the intention, the dynamics, and the placement of everything that molds these incredible feels. Because sometimes the harder you hit, the smaller the drums actually sound. And that's something that when people learn about recording, you start to learn about the presence of the groove within the room as opposed to just how it felt to you, because it's all about translating things, because things will always 100%. Feel a certain way. You record it, you listen back to it, and you go, it doesn't sound like it felt. And usually 100%. It's because you're trying to make it big by hitting really hard, and there's a sensitivity to them that unless you're playing with dynamic intention, it'll get lost in every single scenario, because those are the
100%.
things that actually make the greats stand out, because they understand that context. I once heard a story from Dom Familiero, and he's talking about being in the studio with Steve Gadd, and he was watching Steve Gadd do a jazz session, and he said he was talking to the engineer, and they had all of these icons playing, and he said, as I was watching the engineer, and he's adjusting the volume and changing all these things as they're recording this thing. And they said, and they didn't touch Steve's channels at all. Like he didn't touch them at all throughout the session. And Dom said to them, that's quite interesting, because you're adjusting the levels based on the performance, but you didn't touch Steve's session. And they said, that's why we hire him. He mixes himself. He just plays the way that needs to be played. So we literally just have to get a sound and then pay attention to everybody else, because we are now done, and it's all about, understanding that context. And that's why it's so difficult to replicate the masters, because too many times you're looking at the parts they played, not the intention of which 100%. They played those parts.
Right. 100%. I saw the Steve Gadd poster behind you, and I will say this, is that I didn't want to bring up Steve Gadd, because if I do, I could speak for hours about Steve Gadd, because for me, there will never be anybody on the drums greater than Steve Gadd. Like, there's all these guys that can play fast, play this, play like amazing stuff. But for me personally, he's like on Mount Olympus, or whatever they call it, the top of the heap. For me personally, other guys, maybe somebody else, I understand it. But I know for me, based on his body of work and what he's done, and how he does it, it's actually, it's incredible. It's like, it's just something that you can't, I don't know how it manifested itself into being the Steve Gadd, but it's just like, it's weird. It's like, nobody else can do that. It's like, it's never going to be replicated. Like, nobody else is ever going to be like that.
I think a big part of his mastery of musicianship is because he's one of the most humble people you could meet in the industry. And so he's such a humble, sweet guy that despite the level of his discography and his accomplishments, he's earned the right to have this sense of confidence. This humble nature is something that he puts into every situation of which he gets hired for, because he cares so much about just making the music feel good. That's his intention. His intention is not to play that really cool lick that he just learned, to play this really complicated thing. It's about, let me listen to your song. Let me hear the story behind your song. Okay, here's the subtle groove. We're going to start there. Doesn't need anything else, so I'm not going to add anything else. And I remember watching him at Massey Hall a number of years ago, playing with Paul Simon. And you have all these incredible musicians on stage. And I could not stop watching Steve. And he spent most of the show playing really simple parts with brushes. And so you're tapping along and you're adding cymbal shots that he's not adding, because you normally feel that that's where the parts need to go. But he's not doing that, because he doesn't feel the context of it, doesn't need that yet. And so when he plays something, it's because it's so fundamentally important that note's to be there. And if there's not a reason for it to be there, he won't put that note there. That is why these masters are so good, because they understand the context of space. Space in music is music. Whereas for many people, space is uncomfortable and they feel that they need to fill the space. And as I've matured as a player, I've started to value the space in music more and be more intentional about the precision of where I actually place the notes. And if it's not something that is essential, I'd rather not play it. But that's part of the creative and musical journey that many people will get, but not everyone does. But we're all
Not
on a
everyone
different
gets
path.
it though.
Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. Not everybody gets it, and that's fine too, right? Like at the end of the day, you got to try and be, I think, true to yourself and who you are. If
Mm-hmm.
you like to play a lot of notes, then play that. Don't frown on somebody who doesn't like to play on the notes. And
Mm-hmm.
conversely, if you're a guy who just likes to play very few notes, don't get mad at somebody for playing a lot of notes. That's what he feels and that's what he likes. You know, there's room for everybody to do what they want to do. But it's not necessary to put down or look down upon somebody if they're not doing what you're doing or trying to do what you're doing. You know, it's like, it's unfortunate. And going back to the social media thing, I think that's, you know, part of the reason why it's dangerous for younger musicians, because they're feeling like, if I'm not doing that, then I'm not worthy. I got to do something else. I got to go become a dentist and not a drummer. No, that's not true. Like, you can do your own thing, find your own voice, man. You know, and the other problem too is, I will say this, is that because you can look at the drummer and see what he's doing, it demystifies it and it doesn't make you try and figure it out or create it or play it a different way. Like when we were coming up or when I was coming up and I'm listening to all the recordings, I can't see what these guys do. I can't see what Steve Gadd is doing. So what I do is I try and figure it out, but I play it my own way. So it kind of sounds like that's how I develop my identity and who I am. Right? So,
and by doing it that way, you're being genuine because you're hearing something that inspires you and you're interpreting it in a way that continues to inspire you, that is a true reflection of your creative voice. Whereas sometimes when people see things visually, it's now become a distraction because they feel if they don't do it the way they saw the person do that, then it's wrong. And now I can't do it that way. And it's frustrating. As I said, we're of similar generation. And so I'm the same way. You put on a record and you'd listen to the same record and then you would get into the songs. Whereas now, because of so much streaming music and stuff, now people aren't devoting the same amount of time to a song that speaks to them because they're already on to the next song. Whereas we would, you know, jump on the subway and go downtown Toronto and buy a record and then read the liner notes on the way home. And then by the time we get home, we invested 3 hours of our time to buy a record that has 6 songs on it. And we would devote hours to that to figure this out. And so things have changed. That's not to say it's necessarily bad. It's just different, but we have different perspectives. And I think it's just, you know, the key is be passionate about what speaks to you. Be honest in terms of what it is that
honest
you want to do.
Is the key word.
And don't let other people's opinions or other people's experiences deter you from your own creative journey.
100%. Yeah. No, most definitely. Don't let anybody dictate the path that you need to take. It should be, everybody got to lead their own path, find their own way, and you'll be fine. In order to have longevity, you got to be honest. That's important. And true to yourself, man. And be as original as you can, right? You don't want to be cookie cutter, right? Because if you're copying everything that you see online, what's great? That's great. Like if you like, there's online, you can see guys who play like Dave Weckl, right? Great, perfect. But at the end of the day, if I have money and I play keyboards or guitar or I'm a band leader, and I can afford it, I'm hiring Dave Weckl. Why would I hire you? You sound great. You sound kind of like Dave Weckl, but I can afford Dave Weckl. Why would I hire you? It's a waste of time. That's a waste of money right there. So, you just be true to yourself. Never lose the passion to learn. And I think you will find whatever success it is that you are seeking. So I just want to say, as that I've been following your career for a number of years, and it's just been such an absolute pleasure for me to get an opportunity to have this conversation. And I really look forward to our paths crossing again. But
all the best continued success for you. I hope
Thank
to
you.
actually get out and catch one of the shows that you're doing. And Juliet is on my list of shows to catch in Toronto. So I hope to get out and hear you play at some
Well,
point.
I hope to see you down there, if not there, somewhere along the line. Even if I'm in Hamilton doing a gig, and you're able to come out, that would be great too. And what you're doing is, I only recently found out about your podcast, but what you're doing is great. You're getting a message out there to everybody, young and old, about music. You don't have to be young to start playing drums. It's great that you're getting the word out and having everybody talk about their own personal experiences. And people got to realize that my way isn't the right way for everybody, right? So you just got to take all those bits of information, put them together, and come up with something that works for you. And stuff like these podcasts is perfect, right? It's a perfect way to find out about people you know and people you don't know. Like, most people won't know about me, but they may be able to get some common ground again and be able to, it might hit a nerve with them, something that I said, and it might spark them in a direction, to help them along their musical journey and help them through some rough times too, right? Because as musicians, we go through a lot of rough times. It's not all glory. It's not all fame and glory and sitting on a stage and having people scream at you. There's bad times too, right? That you have to deal with. So if you can listen to other people's stories and, it sounds familiar to your story, and you, well, hey man, he got through it. He's still doing stuff, and maybe, it can give them some fortitude, strength and fortitude to get through whatever they're going through and come through the other side and continue on their journey.
Yeah.
So these things are great, man. You're doing a great service.
I truly appreciate that. I really firmly believe that the most important aspects of anyone's life or journey is conversations and building community. And I am incredibly blessed to invite you into my community. And I look forward to carrying on this conversation, but it has been a pleasure.
Yeah, the pleasure has been mine, all mine. I appreciate it. And, thank you for inviting me on this. Hopefully somebody will get something out of it that's going to help them. And I look forward to listening to your podcast. I've listened to a few before I talk to you, and I'll continue to listen to your podcasts.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Cheers.
You've been listening to the Drummer's Pathway podcast. Please share and subscribe, get the word out, and let's keep the discussion going. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.